one of my first dates with my wife was in Jerusalem, in the old city of Jerusalem. And there's a lemon tree, and I used to stop always. Whenever I walk by the lemon tree, I would stop, even when it didn't have fruits, because it didn't always have fruits. My mother has a lemon tree the whole year, it gives fruits. But that tree only a certain season gave fruits. But the leaves of the lemon tree, if you scratch a lemon leaf, I don't know if you ever smell it smells beautiful. So I would say, let's stop by the tree. And my wife said, who makes a blessing over trees, leaves? Crazy guy. But don't worry, we already broke her in since then. That's every time I stop by the tree, it's an opportunity to pause and to thank HaKadosh Baruch Hu for creating something beautiful in the world. I think this is something, a lot of these berachot, I can't tell you it's the only reason for them. Our rabbis had many reasons when they taught us things. But one of them is to be Hashem conscious in our whole life, to be conscious that we are living in a world that is full of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's creations, everything. And whenever we can pause and reflect, think about how people eat and they drink and they trample in the world without any awareness that anything here didn't come from them, that it's not theirs, that we're borrowing it, that our life is borrowed, that time is limited. There's a lack of, I hate to resort to this, a lack of consciousness in this world about anything that people do. And by us, there are berachot almost before everything that we do. Even, think about it, even when you come out of the bathroom, to just stop and say, thank you, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, for letting everything work. I appreciate that. That's something that it goes a very long way to showing gratitude and to be conscious of the fact that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is everywhere in the world. I think our rabbis are teaching us a lot through this. They want us to live a life that is conscious of the Creator, always. And there's nothing better to do that than to, I know it sounds, to get into habit. Habit is always viewed as a bad thing. Like, you shouldn't do things out of habit. But sometimes habits are healthy. Healthy habits are good for you. To always, my child, you have to explain like this. There is a very scary midrash. I should let you know. A very scary rabbinic teaching. My wife has a class about it somewhere. I could find it for you. HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us His world, in the book of Bereshit, le'ovda u'leshoma, to use the earth, to work the earth, and to preserve the earth. And our rabbis have terrifying teachings on that verse of what will happen to humanity when we cease preserving the earth. The damage that we can bring. People have this mentality that I can do whatever I want, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu will make the world keep going. That's His job. If you just look at the amount of extinct species that we have on this earth, forget endangered species, extinct, things that were alive on this earth 100 years ago, that are not here anymore. They're gone forever. And there's not a chance in the world that you or your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren will ever see them again. This should put into your mind that human beings have the power to destroy this world. We can destroy this world. It's not indestructible. And part of our job is to be conscious that everything that we do leaves an imprint on this earth that's there. It always disturbs me that in the Jewish world, I can't speak of that non-Jewish world, in the Jewish world, that those who care to preserve the world are lumped into a certain political camp, as if it's not all our responsibility to make sure that this world, I don't know what other people think, I know what our rabbis believed about this earth and what we are capable of doing to it. And we've experienced that with our own eyes. I mean, you don't have to go very far, you don't have to believe in any theories, you just have to look at what we've done so far. And we have a miserable track record. It's almost like what we've managed to do in the last 150 years. 2,000 years before, they weren't able to pull off what we did in the last 150 years. And we have to stop and say, why are we creating a humanity that doesn't care at all about the world around us? Rabbi Avraham Yitzchak Kohen Kook was a great Kabbalist, was also the chief rabbi of Israel before the founding of the state of Israel, the Ashkenazi chief rabbi. He had a student, Rabbi Aryeh Levin. Rabbi Aryeh Levin, they wrote a book about him called The Tzaddik of Jerusalem. It's a very interesting book. Rabbi Aryeh Levin, his grandson, was a witness at my wedding, my ketubah. Rabbi Aryeh Levin was walking with his rabbi. They used to go for nature walks, and they sat down in a patch of grass, and they were talking. And you ever seen when people sit in a patch of grass, what they do? Their fingers, they start to rip blades of grass out of the ground. And he saw Rabbi Aryeh Levin. He was like, I don't know, just pulled some grass out of the ground, which is what he did, a habit. And Rav Kook turned to him with the wife and said, what are you doing? He said, what do you mean? What are you doing to the grass? I said, I just pulled a blade of grass. He told him, every blade of grass that exists in this sphere, in this world, has a heavenly blade of grass that exists as well. And you just plucked that blade of grass out, which means you just plucked a blade of grass out of heaven. He says, if there was a reason for it, you needed the grass, you're going to eat the grass, you're going to decorate with the grass, fine. So, but just sitting around and bored, so you're destroying the world? How can you just do that because you've got nothing better to do? He never realized. Such a great tzaddik walks around this earth conscious that even a blade of grass shouldn't be damaged for no reason. And I think that there's a certain... We live in a world where people, they don't care to damage other people's property, they don't care to take other people's spouses, they don't care to... All kinds of things that the world is doing. Of course they don't care about grass because they're so busy destroying everybody else's life. They're living a world in which I'm not conscious of anything. I do whatever I want, however I want, whenever I want to do it. Our rabbis, though, programmed us to think differently, to believe differently. And this is something that we have to... So I was telling you about my children. Every once in a while I'm in the grocery store and I see kids throwing tantrums. My kids throw tantrums too, so don't judge me by my kids' tantrums, okay? But I'm in the grocery store and I see a kid wants a candy and the parent doesn't want to give them the candy. So what do? They kick and scream and shout and yell. But all those grocery stores have the same candy section right before you check out. It's there to make kids throw tantrums at their parents. It's the whole purpose of that aisle. There's no other reason that it's right there. Yeah? And it's a fascinating thing to watch. Because when I go to that aisle, my kid won't ask me for a candy. My child will say, Abba, is this candy kosher? If I say no, and I could abuse this very easily, if I say no, they'll just say, okay, and put it back and walk away. You have to understand what this means, is that in the mind of every child, I see a candy, I want it. I see that cookie, I want it. And so we've managed to program children that before they even want something, they think, can I have it? Can I have it? Imagine this. My children are not home waking up. Maybe they probably woke up right. They wake up in the morning. They see their, whatever it was, their cookie they left on the counter from last night in their spot, so nobody should touch it because they're going to finish it tomorrow. I have one child who leaves things over for the next day. All the other kids, you give them a bag of candy, it's gone the next day. I have one child, Hashem should bless him, he keeps things for weeks and weeks. One jelly bean every day just to make it. He manages to portion control in ways that I've never seen anybody in my life do that. His only regret about Slurpees is that you can't keep them from one day to the next. So he hasn't managed to find a way to freeze it, but that it doesn't get frozen solid. So he's... and they wake up in the morning. They want to go eat whatever it is there. But they know, before I wake up, I say Modeh-Ani in the morning. After that, I go to the restroom. I wash my hands. I do Netilat Yadayim. If they're old enough, they know they should pray something before they eat. So they go to pray. They're hungry. They're thirsty, like everybody else in the world who wakes up. But they know they don't eat before they pray. And they pray. Now, for now, it's 5-minute prayers, but soon it'll be an hour and a half. And they will pray. And when they're done praying, now I want to have my French toast. But we got to wash their hands for bread. And they wash their hands. They make a Netilat Yadayim. They say Hamotzi. And then they come and they eat their bread. Imagine how many steps this child goes through before they realize I'm allowed to take something off the table that was there from when I woke up. Forget religious value. You're looking at a world, think of Hollywood just for a moment. You're looking at a world, I'm thinking of a dozen men right now that I can name off the top of my head, who never got the memo, you can't touch her unless she told you yes. It's a world in which people are taking whatever they want, whenever they want, however they want. There is no thought of, I can't do something without going through due process beforehand. And just the value of that, forget the value of religion. When you give a child this type of discipline, it's from 2 years old. You give a child the discipline, and you teach them, even in the small details in life, you have to make decisions that are right. Then you hope by the time they hit 16 or 18, and they're faced with big decisions, they've already been given the self-control of, that's something that I'm going to do. I'm always going to be able to control myself. Does people slip up? People always slip up. Do religious kids slip up? All the time. That's why we're here. That's the whole world. We're all human beings. But when you think about this in this way, what are we really teaching people? This discipline that we're teaching people, it goes a very long way. It's in a person's nature telling them, you can't do whatever you want. I want you to be accountable for the things that you do. Think of diets. They say that Hanukkah is a miracle of Hanukkah. The one jug of oil lasted for 8 days. So they experienced the reverse miracle of Hanukkah. The donuts they bought for 8 days, they finished it in 1 day. That was the reverse miracle of Hanukkah. You think to yourself, and anyone who's worked in an environment where people keep kosher and some people don't. So you come to the Thanksgiving party or the Christmas party or the New Year's, or whatever they're celebrating over there in the office. They say, oh, can't you have some of the pepperoni pizza? No, I'm sorry, I keep kosher. Yeah, we know, but you can break it for today, can't you? There's no awareness that, what do you mean break it for today? I've never broken it in my life. There's never been a time since I started keeping kosher that I broke this thing of kosher. And you think about people, the diets that people try, and they try this diet and that diet, the next diet, and 3 days later, they're off the diet. Why? Because they don't have the ability to say, I'm just deciding now that I will never eat this in my life, or I will not eat it for the next 3 months. Right? They can't do it. They can't do it because nobody gave them the tools to do it. You think about a child who's been observant from the day they were born, and now they're 30 or 40 or 50. That means 50 years they never broke their diet. Find me someone who's that disciplined. Even just for that purpose and for that sake. And that's not the reason why our rabbis give us these commandments. But that's just enough to say, that's something I like to try. I like to try that every time before I take something out of this world. It's a food, it's a plant, I want to make sure that I am conscious of where it came from. It comes from the Creator, it was grown on a tree. Now I'm taking it, but that's something I'm aware of. Just look at how much food is destroyed, crops, destruction. In any first world country, to regulate market prices, to keep supply and demand balanced, to whatever else, there are entire fields that just get burned. If you remember the beginning of COVID, they were killing pigs. Remember this? I don't know if you were familiar with this, what's going on. There were entire farms of pigs. There were not enough meat workers because somewhere in Iowa, the meat workers all got sick. And so you had 2 weeks worth of pigs that couldn't be slaughtered. So they just told the slaughterhouse, gas the pigs, and start over next week. And millions of animals were killed because we couldn't keep up with the supply and demand, and because of X, Y, and Z. And you're talking about, forget cruelty to animals and forget all of the things that go there. But you wonder, do you know how many countries in the world don't have food at all? Maybe keep these pigs on the side for 2 weeks, and the same people who told you to spend money to destroy them, maybe they could get some kind of ship together, not out of Long Beach, but out of somewhere else, and they'll get them to another country who needs them, or even people in your own country who need them. But we live in a world where nobody cares. Nobody cares. And we're trying to be educated against that type of mentality.